Most men aren't lonely because they prefer solitude. Most men are lonely because they were never taught how to connect. Okay, when we talk about this concept of friendship, if you look a little bit closer and you look under the actual hood, most men don't really have deep friendships. They have acquaintances with historical familiarity that doesn't really go beneath the surface. Okay, the truth of the matter is when it comes to society and in terms of male friendship, we can see and hear it in very different ways that we are lacking. And before you get mad, and you're like, oh, Isaiah, that's not true. I have these deep friendships, I have these deep bonds. If it doesn't apply to you, it won't impact you. I promise. Because I've done my own deep dive into what friendship looks like, right? What is important, what may be lacking in some spaces. And it's very telling. You know, statistically, it says that most of us will lose friends or two friends a year in our 30s or every couple of years, something to that degree. And when we really think about that, men statistically don't have close male friendships later in life, which is why their mental health is impacted a little bit worse and more than women, for example, because they typically still have village, they still have community very late into life. And a part of that is what has society taught us about male friendship. It's supposed to be rough, it's supposed to be rugged, there should be an activity, okay? But if we were to pause a lot of times and we remove those activities, we remove those buffers, we start to understand, well, is something else missing? And most men may not readily admit, or they might not even know how to communicate that, hey, I need some closer connection. I need deeper bonds. I'm feeling a little hollow. But society has told men to be men, right? You gotta be a man, which means you have to rid yourself of emotions and sensitivity. That's not allowed, that's not okay. Because otherwise you're gonna be perceived as something that has a negative connotation to it, right? Now your sexual orientation becomes the question, which implies that you can only have close male bonds if you are looking to be sexually intimate with them, versus just saying, no, this is actually a prerequisite or a requirement for me to have a healthy life. See, a lot of times men were taught this idea of, I'm only as good as what I am doing or providing, which is why the social hierarchy, you're successful if you have the wife, you have the children, you have the job, you have the money, okay? That's what makes you successful. Very rarely in any capacity do you hear people say, you know you have made a success of life when you have solid friendships that you can carry later on to life. Like, yeah, we see posts about it, but even if you look at those posts, it's just kind of like a throwaway, right? It's virtuous, it's performative even. Because a lot of times when we get to the grit of what it actually takes to build and sustain healthy friendships, most people are repulsed by it. Effort, consistency, intimacy, right? Intentionality, the willingness to prioritize. You know, a lot of times people, especially men, they will look at the friendships that they have, and when they talk about how close these guys are, it's because we've known each other for so long, right? History of the relationship versus health of it. You know, I've heard some people brag about the fact that they don't even know their best friend's last name and they've been friends for God knows how long. How do you go that long without getting to know this person, your person, so fully? Because there's so much that goes into a name. Why have I not made the effort to get to know you fully? And there are certain signs of a man that might be lonely and actually suffering more than he would readily admit to. Right? What do his habits look like? Okay, the desire for distraction or always be busy, right? Inundated with work. And codependency can rise too. Like, the only relationship that matters is my girlfriend or my partner with whatever orientation. That's it. Okay. And a lot of times his health will be affected. I take a look at myself and also my relationships as I've gotten older, and I realized in a lot of ways, like, man, my bonds were not that deep. And I desired deepness. And for a long time, I was like, man, maybe it's something that I'm doing wrong, right? Maybe this is not how you do friendship. But then I listened a little bit closer. A lot of guys that I would even talk to and engage with, they have feelings, but they just don't know how to express them, or they haven't felt safe to actually express what they need or what's going on, because it's going to be perceived a certain way, or it just feels uncomfortable in my body. I've never been taught that this connection was even allowed. So it feels foreign to me. It also feels wrong. It feels like I shouldn't be doing this, because if I do, then what does that mean about me? Deep connections require intimacy. Deep connections require vulnerability, right? Deep connections require consistency. And as much as we say, like, yeah, we could go years and months without talking to each other and still be solid, it all depends on what level of friendship you are desiring. If it's an acquaintance, then yeah, you can do that. Absolutely. We can pick up where we left off, because there's never really any skin in the game. But if it's somebody who deeply matters to you, that might not feel right. Why would I not want to stay connected to somebody that's so important to me? Right? Why would I not want to be a part of their lives and have them a part of mine? How does that make sense? See, sometimes I think men feel like they are not allowed to desire that. I shouldn't want this. And the more we try to deny our truth or our desire for that deeper bond, the sadder we get. The more it hurts, the more our mental health and our emotional health is impacted. A lot of men may be so lonely they don't even realize it, but they busy themselves with other things. They busy themselves with a relationship, understanding that, well, this person can't even fulfill all my needs. They might fulfill one or two or the other things, right? The superficial needs, but they are not a replacement for this other thing, nor should they be. Everybody has their place in our lives, but do we value them the same? So what does healthy friendship look like? Well, it looks like connection. It looks like being real. It looks like creating that safe space. A lot of times men may not feel safe with each other. I don't necessarily feel safe to open up. It's not that I'm in physical danger always, although that could be a component, but also, what if I get rejected? What if I get made fun of? What if I get shamed? What if they go back and tell other people something? Now I gotta deal with that. So yeah, I'd rather not say anything. And suppression leads to depression. Sometimes it's just simply okay to ask yourself, hey, what do I need? You know, like I said, as a guy who has lived life and, you know, navigated so many friendships and the highs and lows, a lot of times it's felt like, damn, something just feels like it's not clicking. There's a desire there, and we both probably have it, but the communication barrier might be there, okay? The emotional vulnerability and availability barrier might be there, or just a value system. But in order to have deeper bonds, you have to also be willing to initiate. See, a lot of times we wait for everybody else to do the hard work, the heavy lifting. But sometimes it has to be you. And you can't always fear rejection if you desire honest and intentional relationships. And also, if you take a look at your relationships a lot of times and you ask yourself, well, is this relationship based on the history of just knowing one another or the health? A lot of guys, you'll say, yeah, this person, they do these things, but oh, we've been close or we've been friends since preschool, so I can't get rid of them, right? But how fruitful is that relationship? And this isn't to say that you have to get rid of everybody, but it is, you have to get honest with everybody that you consider a friend, or everybody who considers you a friend. And if you really want to challenge yourself, hey, run the risk and ask one of your boys, hey, what do you value about this friendship? You hear what they say? We all need friends. Friendship is not a buffer Friendship is not an accessory. Friendship is a necessity, okay? And as much as we all talk about it from a distance, it feels very different to be up close and personal with the understanding that, hey, friendship is what keeps me alive, literally and figuratively. So, how willing are you to deepen your bonds with your friends? And ask yourself, what does friendship mean to me? Because you don't have to be lonely. That's not the goal in life, nor is that the prerequisite to do well in it. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.